just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn a little bit about how we can really strengthen early learning foundations and a little bit about what Lego does in that realm. So the goal that we're really going to keep in our brains is play with purpose. That play, the education is not, it's preaching to the choir. But I want to maybe bring some insights into you to see how you can maybe take this to another level. And so just as an introduction, my name is Denise Phillips, and I am a solution architect of Lego Education. And that is a great title. What I do, I was a teacher for 30 years. What I do is help our teams work with districts in creating implementations that make sense for their schools, that make sense for their vision. So that's a little bit about what I do. And I have my cohort here with me, Amelia Crespo. And I don't know if Amelia's going to come off. Amelia, you want to come off and just introduce yourself briefly, or you want me just to introduce yourself? I'm fine with either one.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure
All right,
can.
Yeah, so I'm Amelia Crespo. I'm the key account manager for the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, and Hawaii. So happy to see some familiar names and faces here. Yeah, thanks so much, Denise, for hosting.
Absolutely, this is fun. So we always like to start with kind of our mission, and it does tie to that play with purpose. But when you look at the mission, I like to break it down a little bit, because I like to look at the first part of it. When we talk about inspire and develop, it's great to inspire students, to get them excited about something, to get them engaged in something. But unless we provide them the skills and knowledge they need to develop in those areas, we won't create those builders of tomorrow. And then moving on, when we talk about builders of tomorrow, we don't just mean physical builders. We mean builders of policy, builders of peace, builders of communication. And again, it's always connected to every student succeeding. So it's the idea is, how can we bring this message and bring these tools and bring this learning to every student? So on that way of thinking about it, I want you to imagine if every lesson taught had these characteristics. First, it was actively engaging, not necessarily entertaining, but engaging, cognitively engaging. Also, if it was joyful, meaningful, if it was socially interactive, iterative. Now, that iterative piece simply refers to the idea that failure is a necessity. Something to be tolerated, it's actually a necessity, and not necessarily failure, but room for improvement. How can I change this? How can I alter this? How can I make this better? How can I take this learning in a new direction? So this is actually, a lot of people don't know this, but the Lego Foundation is part of the Lego Group, and it actually receives 25% of the profits of the Lego Group. And they've done a great deal of research and studies around purposeful play and playing with purpose. And one of their papers, and I'll be sharing a QR code in just a little bit, one of the papers connected with this research is called The Neuroscience Behind Play, and it identifies these 5 characteristics as being those that are optimal for purposeful play. So when you think about this for early education or for elementary, middle, and moving on, imagine what effects this would have, not only on student learning, but on teacher enjoyment, teacher retention, on goals that you have for your social emotional learning, for your holistic kind of goals around teaching and learning. So that I always love to share that, because these are our ultimate goals. And whenever we're doing activities with teachers or with students, or we're kind of demonstrating some of this, we go back to this. Say, did you find these 5 characteristics? Now, I love this quote because it really ties to the play with purpose. And I love who said it. I mean, and in that early education world, it's not as much of a conversation that we know how important play is. But I think sometimes we don't understand the differences between open-ended play or purposeful play or directed play. And so I want to dig into that a little bit. So the Lego Foundation, again, has done a little bit of research on, okay, how can we categorize and really study these different elements of play, whether it be physical, outside even, but physical play, manipulation of objects, using play to represent symbols, pretending, or playing with rules and setting constraints. So some of that research has also been connected to the work by Zosh Hirsch-Pasek and their colleagues in 2018. And it really looks at it, and it's not necessarily a continuum, it's more categorical in a way. It's a continuum, but it's also categorical. So when you look at this chart, what we're looking at is the sweet spot really is in that middle green section. Because if something, and the key is what is an issue, who initiates it, who directs it. So in free play, in students just free play, they initiate and they direct. And the teacher and the adults are just sitting back watching. A lot of this happens at recess. A lot of this happens just in maybe centers time where they're just doing their own choices. But with guided play, the teacher defines the constraints in a way. They define the goals. They define what we want to accomplish by the end. But then it's opened up to the students to have a lot more time and a lot more ability to direct their own learning. So the teacher, and sometimes this is the hardest thing for teachers to let go because they want to direct that. They want to say, we're going to do this fun activity and you're going to do it this way. And that leans more in playful instruction or in direct instruction, where the adult, it might be fun, it might be have elements of play, but it's more controlled by the adults. So this is just an example of an activity we do when we are in person with people. And we're going to do a version of it here. I want you to bear with me. And I'm going to ask you to chat after this. I'm going to add a question for you. What I'd like you to do is, this is an activity we do with any bricks that we have in our hands. Okay, any bricks. And I'm going to show you bricks put together in a certain configuration. I want you to stare at those 4 bricks for about 5 seconds, and then they're going to be taken away. At the time they're taken away, I know you don't have bricks in front of you, but you're going to imagine you have to put those together in the exact same way. So the second it's taken away, imagine that you're grabbing those bricks and putting together. Then I'm going to ask your reflection on that. Okay, so here we go. Okay. How many of you forgot everything that was there, would completely lost as to what to put together? You would have had some difficulty putting those together. How many of you this before or knew where I was going and knew to focus and started planning it in your head ahead of time and would have had no problem putting those together? So just sort of talk to me a little bit about what would have happened. I did this with a group of 10 superintendents, and one of them, the second it was taken away from him, one of them just looked at me and said, I did not realize I was going to have to think. Yep. Yep, absolutely. Too focused on trying to remember the blocks. Now, in your defense, you and your partner in person would have chosen the 4 blocks ahead of time, known which 4 blocks were being used. So that would make it a little bit easier. So you may not realize it. Coming. Keep them coming. Yep, color order. So let's go back to it again. So a lot of times, we can do a lot of different things with this type of activity. One variation of this is that we have students put, or teachers put those blocks together back to back and then have to orally give the instructions for putting them together, which whole another set of skills. But you may not have realized it. That activity you were using, I mean, you can progress, you can start with 3, you can go up to 10 maybe even. I think I've done it with groups I've had one group that gets up to 6. But I think 3 to 10 bricks, and you may not realize it, but you were demonstrating, and if you were doing it in person, you'd probably be demonstrating more of these, but you were actually building and developing 24 different skills. This is again from the research from the Lego Foundation. Some of the ones that are key here are that sensory motor skill. If you were doing it in person, I know virtual is a little weird, but if you were moving that, you would have to see what the tricky one was. There was one that wasn't clicked into the other. So there was a sneakiness of it. Okay. But also, someone else in short-term memory and actually connecting to that short-term memory. Sometimes we have more short-term memory than we think we do. We're just not focused on, okay, I need to actually pay attention here. Mental imagery, what was the top? A lot of you said I was paying attention to the colors. I was paying attention to what that was. Emotional regulation, that panic when you go, oh my gosh, I don't remember any of it. That's something that we really need to develop in our students. And again, imitation. So those, just in this activity, you were developing those 24 skills, but just those were kind of ones that were tied into this. Now, this article, there's a number of articles on the Lego Foundation site, but if you want to take a picture of this and head to, this is where a lot of the research that we use in the development and implementation at Lego Education, this is where a lot of our research comes from. The Lego Foundation as a whole, but also this document. And I think Amelia, if I know her well and I see her eyes, she's going and getting the link right now, and she'll probably put it in the chat. We've done this before. All right. So it's the idea, looking at that continuum of play is the idea that we want to develop students in all of their abilities, in their creative abilities, their social abilities, their emotional abilities, and their cognitive and physical abilities. And I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir with early ed. Sometimes I have to dig deeper into this when I'm talking to middle school teachers or I'm talking to upper elementary teachers, of saying all of these are connected. And if you're really trying to get them to develop their cognitive abilities, they can't leave out these others. They need to have them here. And so how do we do this at Lego Education? Well, we do it in a number of ways. We really try and connect to that holistic piece and blend these solutions and these booster sets together in a way that fits the vision of the district. In some districts, they really have a vision for building their reading readiness programs and their understanding of stories and their understanding of sequence. And so we might focus in different areas, but a lot of these solutions all have commonalities. And you'll notice that in green are our core solutions, and those have lessons connected to them. They have inspiration cards. Sometimes they have whole separate units. For example, in Coding Express, there's connected units for just early computer science focus. In STEAM Park, there are science specific and maker units. And then we combine those with the solutions in orange, which are called our booster sets, which allow for that cross-curricular integration. And I saw an amazing lesson once done by a pre-K TK teacher where she was using animals for sorting in a math lesson. So that's a little bit about the work that we're doing. Now, I want to dig in a little bit deeper, but I'd like to show you just a brief video to give you an overview. And I believe we have the sound going. If we don't, Amelia, let me know immediately and we'll just move on. But if you can hear the sound, I'll play it through. Not sure why it stopped. I will go ahead and skip it. I think what we're going to do and do is dive in a little bit to show you what some of those lessons might look like and experiences might look like. Again, all of the solutions come with unit plans, with lessons and videos. Obviously, they come with bricks, but you get getting started and inspiration cards. And for Coding Express, there's also an app application. It's not necessary, it's not required, but you can extend it into some of the more some of the curricular areas using the app. And so let's free fall into a lesson. So this is from STEAM Park, which focuses on early STEAM skills like pushes and pulls and levers and gravity and ramps. And so this is a lesson. And so every one of our lessons is the teacher support is all online. There's no login. They can get it right there. It tells them what standards are being addressed. It gives them all aspects of the lesson. And so we're going to dive in and just kind of take you through what a lesson might look like. So in this example, what students are going to be doing first is they're going to be looking at this and saying, what do you see? What do you observe? You're building prior knowledge. And so they might share things like, well, I see two minifigures up on something. It looks like a ride. And oh, I see a gear or a pulley. So there's all sorts of, thank you, Amelia. And so they might offer what they see. But then they're shared a story. And I printed it here for you, but for the students, the teacher would share the story. And basically, they're going to ride a ride called Free Fall. And they waited in line and they got on the platform and it moved them up and they're so excited. And then they do the ride and they want to do it again. Sets up a narrative. And I've worked with a lot of districts that lean into these narratives really deeply. They talk about the characters. They talk about what happened first, what happened second. But then with the build, you would have students go through and do that build. What they can do is they can build that build, and then you talk to them about it and say, okay, well, what caused the platform to drop? And then what happened after it dropped? Because you're leading them into understanding cause and effect or chain of events. So you might bring in those words now, those vocabulary words, so that you're not bringing them in isolation. You talk about, well, what caused? What was the effect of that happening? What triggered it? All of a sudden, you're talking about these things, and then you dive in even further. And you say, okay, now it's your turn. Now what I want you to do is I want you to create something using the bricks in STEAM Park that something to happen. And you can always give them the inspiration, or you can not give them the inspiration. Show them a shorter version. Notice in one of the images, I just showed them one part of this. I could have just shown them the ramp. So this is where that guided play comes in, because I might have directed it up until that point. But now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, now your constraints are that you need to create something that causes something else to happen. And if you can get two things, that's great. Okay, so something causes something else, which causes something else. But what I'm doing now is I'm saying it's up to you to create, and you would be shocked at what they're able to come up with. They don't have to use a ramp. They don't have to use the pulleys or anything that they did. They get to come up with this on their own. So that's where it is student directed, teacher directed, but teacher initiated, but student directed. Okay, I finally got there. And so then as you're going through this, all of a sudden now you can ask some specific questions. So regardless of what they created, what was the first cause, trigger in your chain reaction? Okay, so what was the first event? First cause, the first chain, the first event. So you're using this vocabulary over and over again. What was the last event? Did it turn out the way you thought it was gonna, or what happened? How would you change it? How would you iterate it to make it do something different? How did you change it? So with these little kids, with these your amazing young scholars, all of a sudden you're getting into some deep questioning, and they're having to analyze their own play. Now, there's all sorts of ways to take these in different directions. That's the beauty of having these sets of bricks. Yes, there are set 10 lessons. Yes, there are 8 to 10 lessons. Yes, they are there for you. But I, as a teacher for many years, I would go far beyond that. Say, wait a minute, I could use it for this. I could use it for this. I could change things up. This is an example of the Getting Started card that's available for Steam Park. And it provides some ideas for teachers to go beyond the lessons that are there. And this is an example from Storytales. So can I also take Storytales, and we actually have some amazing, if you think about cause and effect, all of a sudden you get into early literacy. What caused this character to do this? What was the effect of this character's actions? So you can really get in deep with one set of bricks that's never going to require a license, a re-upping of a subscription. You have those bricks forever. The sky's the limit. We like to say it's low floor, high ceiling, wide walls. You can really go. And as an example, we even have maker lessons where we design a specific model. In some of the maker lessons for older kids might have focus on design learning, and they're focusing on empathy. Simplify that a little bit with the students, and we have them say, well, what do you see? Now go make something. What do you see? What's the need? Go make something, and now share it. And this is just one example. So look at the image, and they're asked, what do you see? How might you help Mr. Bear stairs? They make a machine or a contraption that helps Mr. Bear get up the stairs, show their machine, and explain how it helped Mr. Bear. So you can take these resources in so many directions, but it all comes really down hands-on, minds-on learning, that bringing that purposeful play connects the holistic goals that we have for our students and lets them develop on a deeper level. So I just wanted to thank you so much, but I also want to open it up for questions. And I don't know if you can come off mute, but you can definitely share your responses in the text. So please, any questions that you might have, I can also go back if you had a question about a particular slide. And thank you to Amelia, who just loaded the chat with all sorts of questions, with all sorts of resources. And I'm just waiting because we have some people chatting in. So that's some of the work that I do. So Elliot asked, do you have any crosswalks between this and other prominent preschool curriculums? And like counting collections and things like that. That's some of the work that we do as solution architects, is helping you find those not necessarily crosswalks, but those connections. Even to, like in California, we have a DRDP, which is a developmental profile assessment. And so I've worked with districts in using these not only for the assessment, for the development of the assessment. So it's looking at combining those, but I've seen it used with very extensively with counting collections. It's a great question, Elliot. Elliot and Savannah. I'm not sure who. I've got both of you on there. If you don't have any questions, you are absolutely welcome to go have the rest of your day. Thank you so much for taking the short time with us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share with you.